Hello everyone, I'm back again. It's been a while. I think I haven't done one of these in about 3 months, and I didn't expect to have such a long delay from appearing on my YouTube channels. And as some of you well know, I've only got 11 subscribers, and some of the views are very low, but I mean, I'm not too fussed about it, to be honest. I mean, you know, you'd like to have more subscribers, who wouldn't, and more viewers. But because I'm pretty much new to this, and I can't say that I'm I can speak as eloquently as a lot of other people can. But I just thought I would make another video presentation, and really it's about history repeating itself. As you all are aware, there's a war going on in the Ukraine, but my channel was specifically because of Berlin, German history from 1914 to 1994. And I'd always thought about what would happen after 1994 in terms of the history of Berlin. And I always asked myself that question because in 1994, the Allies, that is the Americans, the French and the British and the Russians, left Berlin. But that was sort of almost symbolic. It wasn't really, I mean, I would sort of see it as something, it was significant at the time, but has anything really changed? And I don't think it has, because the Americans are still in Germany. Britain has left, because it was part of the British Army of the Rhine. They left in 2018, and they actually speeded up their withdrawal to actually leave Germany. Now, why I bring this all up is, like I said, is because of Ukraine. Because after 1994, like I said, I really wanted to know how the history of Berlin would progress. And what I saw was that Germany really became part of the European Union, even if it, you know, perhaps wasn't as significant then as it is now. And their move towards the United States of Europe, pretty much like the United States of America. But I always see it as something negative, because you've got all the different countries, you've got all the different cultures, you've got all the different histories, you've got all the different religions, and it's not going to gel as well as, say, the United States of America, because every separate state has its own capital, and not only does it have its own capital, it has its own flag. Whereas the European Union isn't really a state as such. You know, it's not a country. So anyway, going back to the Berlin Wall, which is something I'd like to focus on. The Berlin Wall had two reasons why it was built. The first one was basically to stop people leaving the country. So that is to say that because Berlin, where it was like in East Germany, and in order for, say, a Westerner, somebody from the West, to get into Berlin, they would have to go through East Germany before they can get to Berlin. So Berlin effectively was an island. It was like an island in the east, or Eastern Germany, and that was like a gate that was open. By that I mean that those that wanted to escape East Germany only had to go through Berlin to do it. Now, the second reason why they built the wall was to effectively stop World War III. That was the reason. So when the Berlin Wall came down in '89, there was an agreement between Gorbachev and the West, and what that reason was was peace effectively, and it signalled the end of the Soviet Union as it was then at the time. So, and a promise was made to Gorbachev that NATO wouldn't move eastward. So all those countries that you had, that was part of the Soviet bloc, if you like, or satellites, if you could call them, was Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Hungary, and there may have been other Yugoslavia. And what that was like a buffer zone. It was a buffer zone between the West and the East. And when the wall came down, which was, those were like seen as Warsaw Pact countries, and the Warsaw Pact dissolved. There was no longer a need for it. And the promise was made to Gorbachev that NATO would not move east. But what did NATO do? They moved east. All those countries that I mentioned became NATO countries. And now you have like Estonia and Latvia. They're pretty much bordering Russia, as it is now called, the Russian Federation. And when Finland joins NATO, NATO will effectively be bordering, would be on the Russian Federation's border. So if you look at the map of the world, you get your phone out, or you look on Google, and you will see the European continent. You'll be able to see those countries that are bordering Russia, which are NATO countries. Well, if that happened to the United States, say Mexico or Canada, for example, the Americans wouldn't stand for it. There'd be war. So NATO, in my estimation, went a bridge too far by pushing the Russians, because the Russians felt that this was an existential threat. So that's why the Russians are now in Ukraine. So why am I bringing this up? It's because, as bad as the Berlin Wall was, the Berlin Wall effectively stopped World War III from happening. I mean, even John F. Kennedy said, as bad as it is, it's the best of a bad thing, if that makes any sense. You had the Berlin Wall divide families, divide roads, so you'd have like the Berlin Wall being in the middle of the road. So when you used to be able to cross the road, you was unable to cross the road anymore because there's a great big wall there. But that wall was effectively built to stop World War III. Now, as things have developed, that issue of World War III is now upon us, because instead of it being in Berlin, as it was at the time, it's now moved to Ukraine. Why do I bring this up? It's because Poland are now conscripting their own citizens to join the Polish army. Well, why are they doing that? It's because they want to get into Ukraine. Why do they want to get into Ukraine? It's because Lviv, as it was before 1945, belonged to Poland. So the Poles want to get that chunk of Western Ukraine back. Why would they go to all the trouble of conscripting men that they're obliged to join the Polish army, because otherwise they could end up being put in prison for 2 or 3 years if they don't? There's a massive reason for it, and that reason is because they want to get Lviv back. And at the same time, what they were also saying to the Germans was, for reparations, we want X billions of dollars or euros from you. Why are they saying that? Is because after the end of the war in 1945, what was once Germany is now Polish. So you had a chunk of Germany, which was known as East Brandenburg and East Prussia, was ceded to Poland, and part of Poland, or Eastern Poland, was ceded to Ukraine. Why they brought up this demand from the Germans for this money is because they don't want the Germans to say to the Poles, well, if you want Western Ukraine, that chunk of Western Ukraine back, then we want East Prussia and East Brandenburg back. But because they put this pretext of saying that we want all these billions of dollars or euros from you as compensation because of what you've done during World War II, there might not be a point of them actually having any kind of resistance or any kind of argument for the fact that East Brandenburg and East Prussia is now Polish. Is that making sense? Am I being clear about this? So what's the danger? Well, the danger is if Poland go into Ukraine, that would then bring Belarus over the border into northern Ukraine, because Belarus said, if anybody crosses our border, then we have to defend ourselves. Now, if the Poles suddenly decide to say, well, we want to get we want that part of Western Ukraine, then Belarus would then come from the north over the border into Ukraine, and of course that's very, very dangerous because one, Poland is part of NATO. Two, this can create an escalation that could create effectively World War III. Now, I hope it never comes to that. You know, I hope common sense will prevail. But I can just see this escalation from growing and growing and growing. And I say this because of what I know of history and why I'm so fascinated with Berlin and the Berlin Wall and German history from 1914 to 1994. And like I said, I was fascinated to know what would come after 1994, because in 1994, like I said, the Russian troops left Berlin and all the Allies had left Berlin. But I would say that's more symbolic because the Americans are still there in Germany. They've been in Germany since 1945, so they've never left. So effectively, Germany's still under occupation. So what I've got a map. So if you can see this here, I've got one of these books here, and I don't know if I can show it to you, where you could actually see it quite clearly. So I don't know if you can see that there. I don't know if that can focus. You see at the bottom is what Germany looks like today, and at the top is what Germany once looked like. Now, if I show you this map, it might be a little bit clearer. See that there? See this bit here in grey, sort of a light grey? That was part of Germany. See this here? That was part of Germany. So that's East Prussia. This is East Brandenburg. This here is now Polish. And where it's got a border line, as you can see there, that is now Poland. And at the top there, that's Kaliningrad, which is an enclave that belongs to Russia, which was part of East Prussia. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? Now, if Poland moves east, because I don't have a map of Ukraine, so Lviv is where my index finger is, somewhere around there. This part here, I know there's no map, but if you can visualize that, is part of Ukraine. So Poland want to go into Ukraine to get that part of West Ukraine to be part of Poland. And they don't want Germany wanting to get East Brandenburg and East Prussia back. That's why they keep saying to the Germans, you owe us X billions, you know, as reparation. You owe us $1 trillion or something like that. And they're serious because they're going to the Americans and they want to put the Americans to put pressure on the Germans for that money. But I believe that's just a pretext. The other thing that's often not spoken about or ever sort of realised as part of history is that I've got this book here. It says Nemesis at Potsdam, the Anglo-Americans and the Expulsion of the Germans. There was a mass ethnic cleansing, and we call it ethnic cleansing now. It wasn't called ethnic cleansing then, but we call it ethnic cleansing now, where millions of ethnic Germans were forced out of East Prussia and East Brandenburg, and they had to go and they had to leave, and there was thousands of fatalities of people starving to death and people dying as a result of the cold, because in 1945, 1946, 1947 they had these blistering winters. So a lot of people died, and in history as we now know it, nobody's really sort of looked into it and saw how catastrophic it all was at the time. So it's never spoken about. And that's what's happening in Ukraine. There's a lot of people that are leaving the country. Millions of people, in fact, have left the country because of the war. And this is what makes everything so tragic from the point of view of as we now see it. So my observation in this tragedy, as it is focused on how I see it from a historical perspective and how history is effectively repeating itself again. And I would say, if you get your news from the BBC or CNN or MSNBC or any other of these mainstream media channels, it's always good to see from another point of view, because of what I'm telling you is something that's not often spoken about in the mainstream media. So I'd recommend that you look in, you know, on the Duran, for example. There's a YouTube channel called the Duran with Alexander Christoforou and Alexander Makaris, and they will give you day-by-day updates, and they go on for like half an hour, giving a description of what's going on from an opposing point of view to what's been broadcast from the mainstream media. So you get a balance from two sides of the same story. So you get one side from the mainstream media, and from another side from an opposing point of view, and a point of view we don't often hear. Another one would be Garland Nixon. Garland Nixon is very good. Scott Ritter, who's a brilliant military analyst. Then you've got Colonel Douglas McGregor, who's also gives you a balanced perspective from a military point of view. Then you've got Brian Bolerick. I think I pronounced his name. He's from the New Atlas. He's very good at breaking things down. Then you have those that are on the ground giving their reports from the Donbass, and you've got Patrick Lancaster, and you have Graham Phillips, and you have Ava Bartlett, and you have John Mark Dougan, and you have I.O. Gray, all giving from another perspective. So you get a balance from what's going on from both sides of the conflict, rather than just everything from one side. And I'm giving you my point of view from how I see it from a historical perspective, from what happened when the Berlin Wall came down, because the promise was made to Russia, and I don't know if you've heard this, but I'm telling you now, there was a promise made to Russia that NATO would not move east, and that's exactly what they did. because Russia was very vulnerable at the time during the 90s. It was recovering as a result of what happened because the Soviet Union had ended, and it took a while because Yeltsin was in power, and because Yeltsin was being considered drunk, and he wasn't on top of things, and then you had all the oligarchs that were taken advantage of the situation as it was, and they became overnight billionaires and so on and so forth. But the people, the Russian people during the 90s, of course, suffered as a result. And it was only when Putin came to power that he was able to turn things around. And that's where we are today as a result of this war. So I hope I'm not ranting too much. I hope I'm not, putting people off my channel. I mean, I've only got 11 subscribers, and I've only got, I've only got a few people that have left comments, but I thought I'd just make my case because, I see how tragic the whole situation is, and how desperate and how fatal things could be, because it could escalate out of hand. Like I said, the Poles want to go into Ukraine, and I think that would be a terrible decision for them to do, because you just don't know how things could turn out, and you can't control chaos. Anyway, I pretty much said everything that I want to say, and so I will end it there. So, auf Wiedersehen.